So welcome everyone. I'm Ashley Studholm and I'm with the Prince William Conservation Alliance. And we're working to establish equitable and sustainable communities here in Prince William County. And I would encourage you all to check out our website, which you can see here to stay up to date with all the goings on of what we're doing here and the work that we're doing. And you can also go to our calendar to see our upcoming Zoom events, and we are starting to do some in-person events now too, and stay up to date that way. And you'll see here that coming up in December, Valerie Heelsman, who's also here on this call with us, we'll be discussing the spotted lanternfly, an invasive insect species that was discovered here, and what the threat is of that introduction. So hope to see you there as well. And we offer these programs free of charge with the support from people like you. And if you enjoy what we do here, please consider donating, which you can do safely by clicking here, join us on our website. So thank you so much. But let's get back to the real reason why we're here. Tonight we are joined by Charlie Grymes, who will be discussing how to green up our transportation network, which is always timely and really important discussion here in Prince William right now. Charlie has been with PWCA since 2002 and is our mobility chair, and has just a wealth of knowledge on many topics, including transportation, which we have the benefit of hearing tonight. So Charlie, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll pass it on to you.
It looks like Charlie's frozen, so we'll have to wait a minute.
Okay. Well, hopefully he will be returning pretty shortly, because I have the slides, but I don't know if I can. Oh, like magic. So Charlie, again, I'll turn it on over to you.
Technology is not our friend, is it?
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. So tonight I want to give you some solutions to our transportation headaches. It's traditional for all of us to complain about traffic here. When we're stuck in traffic, there's an inner engineer that just emerges from our soul and helps us design new interchanges and new lanes along the highway, any way for us to get that car down the road better. And I'm going to agree that we need more infrastructure, but there's more solutions than the standard pave our road approach. And that's what I want to explore tonight. In particular, we need to remember that about 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions here in Prince William County are coming out of our cars and our trucks. And a year ago, our county officials, along with 23 other jurisdictions in the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, COG for those of us who love acronyms, we all agreed that we were going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to 50% of the 2005 level by the year 2030. That's a challenging target to meet in 8 years. How are we going to get there from here? And the answer is the county's supposed to produce a climate action plan. Reportedly, it's going to be available by the end of June 2022. That's the roadmap that's going to tell us how we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and meet our climate change target. But you really don't need to have much of a brain to realize that in the transportation sector, we're going to have to make some significant changes to business as usual. If we're going to reduce our emissions from vehicles, the greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions, more of the same isn't really going to be the solution. So let me give you an idea that electric vehicles are part of the solution, but don't assume that the sales pitch that no action is required because EVs are going to solve the problem. Don't buy that sales pitch. or solar panels, green power plants, electric vehicles. They're part of the solution, but green energy isn't going to happen overnight. Dominion is going to be burning coal in its power plants till the year 2045. Electric vehicles are part of the solution, but not everybody's going to replace every car with an electric vehicle by 2030 in order for us to meet our greenhouse gas target. The vehicle fleet in 2030 is going to have a lot of gasoline burning cars. We need to figure out how to reduce vehicle miles traveled, how to reduce those tailpipe emissions if we're going to meet our 2030 target. It's possible. It's not easy, but it's possible. And that assumes that we're smart planners. And we're going to have to change our business as usual approach, as I've mentioned, to both land use and transportation planning. And fortunately, right now, Prince William County is preparing a long-range plan, the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. So that's our opportunity to do something different. The program tonight is designed to get you dangerously smart, to get you ready to comment on the land use, transportation, and housing chapters that are going to be going through the public involvement process over the next few months. So best place to start with solutions is to define the problem first. Ready, fire, aim is not my suggested strategy. I think we ought to know what we're trying to deal with before we start figuring out what to do. And so this is where you get to think with your brain. What do you think is the problem with transportation in Prince William County? And typically, if you ask this question, the answer is going to be, we need more roads. We don't have enough roads, need more roads. And the nightmare of living in Prince William County is that you got to commute to get to work. You got to commute to get there. You got to commute to get back. We are a bedroom community. And before COVID, roughly 50% of us drove out of the county every day, going into a different jurisdiction to a job in a different jurisdiction. So this is how we got started as a bedroom community. This is the Shirley Highway. Our first 2 lanes of Shirley Highway got to the Occoquan River in 1949. The next 2 lanes got to the Occoquan in 1950. And that 4-lane divided highway replaced Route 1, the red line on the map on the right. That was the slow road to get to Washington, D.C. When we got the Shirley Highway, we got the fast road to get to the Pentagon. And a lot of people wanted to live down here because they could get to the Pentagon from here. Now, the Shirley Highway is now Interstate 95, but it didn't get to be Interstate 95 right away. Shirley Highway was crossed by the Washington and Old Dominion Railroad. And so it had an at-grade intersection, which disqualified it from being an interstate. And it wasn't until the Washington and Old Dominion Railroad went out of business, then we could turn Shirley Highway into Interstate 95. And we've been growing that highway ever since. Houses in Prince William added commuters to the highway. We built more lanes, then we built more houses, then we built more lanes. And as we sent the commuters north, we grew the commercial tax base in Washington, D.C. in those inner suburbs. The jobs are all on the other side of the Occoquan River, but the workers lived here. And Prince William County taxpayers had the responsibility of building the schools to educate the children of the workers. So real estate property taxes funded building those schools. And we didn't have a lot of commercial property tax base, so it was your houses that paid those taxes. Even today, we only have about 15% of our property tax base comes from commercial property. In contrast, you go to Arlington, where the jobs are, 50% of their property taxes come from commercial property. So the county supervisors were, in the 1990s, facing a tax revolt. People were tired of paying those ever-increasing property taxes. The solution was, in part, the 1998 Comprehensive Plan. That established a development area where it would be cost-effective to build new public infrastructure in a rural area where we could minimize the cost of building new infrastructure. That boundary, that urban growth boundary or urban boundary, was defined primarily over taxes. And we're a bedroom community that has rush hour traffic that resembles the ocean tides, with a wave that goes north in the morning and then a return backwash in the afternoon. So we had to build highways for a peak demand period, not just the regular traffic over the course of the day. It's not average traffic. And many of you, including me, have been part of this problem. I got here in Washington, D.C., and became one of the fish swimming in those rush hour waves. And I did it for about 25 years. I used to commute past the Woodbridge Airport before it became Dillingham Square, because my wife and I both had jobs in downtown DC, but we couldn't afford to live in DC, and we couldn't afford to live in Alexandria. We couldn't afford to live in Arlington. We couldn't afford to live in Fairfax, but we could afford to live in Prince William County. We could drive until we qualified for a mortgage, and we qualified for a mortgage in Prince William. We used to assemble at Tackett's Mill, where the Conservation Alliance has its office. We had 4 carpools that would get together at Tackett's Mill, or actually found the carpool before I bought the house. Commuted off of Hoadley Road, met up at Tackett's Mill. We'd mix and match bodies until we had 4 people in each car, because at that time, the high occupancy vehicle lanes required 4 people in each car. And today there are toll lanes, hot lanes. That's one solution. That's designed to reduce the number of cars on the road at rush hour. Because you may have heard of freeways, but there are no free highways. Taxpayers fund them, including taxpayers who never drive on the road. Toll roads ain't free, but at least it's the drivers on the toll road that's paying for that highway. Those who benefit on a toll road pay the cost. And incidentally, carpools with 3 or more people still ride for free. So that's a solution. We need to incentivize people to slug, to carpool, to avoid adding another car to the highway. Nobody likes to pay tolls. I know nobody likes to pay tolls, but there are no transportation solutions that don't have a cost. Now we have traffic congestion throughout the day. Clogged intersections on Minnieville, Old Bridge, Prince William Parkway throughout the day. Saturday traffic is unreliable as any other day. The ground rule is you don't get on the highway with a half empty gas tank, and you don't get on the highway with a half full bladder, because you just never really know what you're going to run into. And there may be some simple solutions for the complex problems, but there aren't going to be simple solutions for the traffic challenge. You hear somebody say, oh, it's easy, let's just build more roads. Tell them to think again. Building more roads is a simplistic solution. It is not the only solution. It is not the low-cost solution, and it's not the appropriate solution anymore. Sadly, though, for 100 years, that's been our really only solution. We've been building more roads. One size fits all, build another highway. We've tried to build our way out of congestion. We've widened old roads. We've built new roads. We've passed expensive county bond issues. We've passed them again, and we've passed them again. We've added more lane miles. We've added more lane miles. What have we got? Traffic still sucks, but it is a great stimulus for creativity. My carpool used to sit there and dream of how we were going to get our car up into DC quicker and how we were going to get home faster. We dreamed of new interchanges on Route 28. We dreamed of new lanes on I-95. We dreamed of new roads cutting through all the green areas. We dreamed of going up high. We were going to fly above the highways. We dreamed of going down low. Before Elon Musk, we were busy dreaming of building tunnels that would get us down the highway. And we've built a lot of those highways. We have expanded the lane miles. We have focused on one side of the Economics 101 problem. Remember Economics 101? There's a supply side and a demand side. We focused on supply. Build another road, more space for me to drive my car fast. We didn't study the other half of how to reduce the demand for everybody getting on the car driving fast. Those of you who lived here for a while, you know what's happened. We've built more roads. it's like putting out Halloween candy. If you put out Halloween candy the day after Halloween, the stuff the trick-or-treaters didn't collect, how long do you think that candy sits there on the counter? You walk by that counter, grab a little piece of Snickers bar, grab a Reese's cup. Because it's available and easy, your demand for that Halloween candy increased when the supply was increased. In Transportation 101, that's called induced demand. When we add a lane to the highway, more people will see that there's a new way to go there, and I'm going to drive on my own. Why hassle with a carpool? I can turn on my own radio and listen to my own station and drive by myself, at least until everyone else figures that out and it clogs the highway again. So at the moment, we're going to test your experience with this process of building more highways. There's a poll that's going to be launched in a second. Fill out your correct answer to the poll. Kim, I think this is where you do magic with the poll. I'm not sure you all can see the poll. There you go. So clearly, this is your way of looking at the problem. If you have lived here long enough, you know that no matter how many lane miles we build, we're not solving the problem. Oh, now you get to fill out the poll. You had the answers before. Now you get to see the whole question. Pick one. What works for you? There is, of course, one correct answer.
Okay, everybody ready?
Yes, 86%. So that's a clue as to how things are working. If we keep doing more of the same, what's the likelihood of that becoming successful? What have we learned from supply side economics? We've learned that doing the same thing and expecting a different result isn't going to be realistic. It's time for us to address mobility for people rather than just pavement for cars. All right, so enough of the poll. We have seen the poll. So don't necessarily listen to what I'm trying to tell you. Listen to the Secretary of the Virginia Department of Transportation, Sharon Valentine. She's one of the people who supported adding new lanes to I-95. And we're going through one more round of construction as we extend the toll lanes further south. But she knew that those extra lanes won't be enough. She knew that there's really no place to add any more lanes now beyond tearing down homes in existing subdivisions. And I got to tell you that condemning private property and displacing people from occupied homes is not good politics. And that's something that 5 of our supervisors are about to discover as their Route 28 bypass proposal goes forward. So Sharon Valentine looked for Plan B. And she found Plan B. The state decided that instead of expanding I-95 again and again and again, they're going to spend $3.7 billion on passenger rail. So the state's buying railroad track from CSX and expanding services for Virginia Railway Express and Amtrak. That's how we get people off the highway. We give them a supply alternative besides cars. Choke point for trains right now is the 2-track Long Bridge over the Potomac River. So Virginia agreed to build another 2-track railroad bridge. There are going to be 3 or 4 tracks south of the Potomac River into Spotsylvania County, south of Fredericksburg, except at 3 key spots. The next choke points for passenger rail are going to be in Prince William County. Stand on the track over Ripon and you can see there's only 2 tracks. There's 2 tracks for freight trains, and passenger rail has to squeeze in between the freight trains. Look at the bridges over in the Absco Creek, the Occoquan River, and Powell's Creek. There's only 2 tracks for those bridges. Now we got 3 tracks for Quantico Creek. We did an upgrade back in 2007. That got rid of the last single track section remaining on the 110 miles between Washington and Richmond. So rail is part of the solution. We're done with highway expansion in Eastern Prince William. The new hot lanes, the new bridges that'll be completed over the Potomac River, and the Rappahannock River, they're going to get finished soon. And that's it. The Commonwealth of Virginia is investing in expanding the ability of rail to move people rather than more of the same highway expansion. And now is the time to expand rail capacity. Every VRE car has 120 people in it, at least after COVID, it'll have 120 people in it. That's a whole lot of cars that could be clogging the highway. So back to the original question, what's the problem with transportation? I'm going to suggest the answer is the mismatch between supply and demand. Not that we don't have enough road miles, we just have a disconnect between what are the ways for people to get around and what are the supply and the capacity of people to get around. And we can modify people's desires to get around by getting in a car and driving at rush hour. We can modify people's desire to get in a car and drive at lunchtime, or there's not going to be enough roads. And now we know that telecommuting is going to be a key part of the solution. The COVID pandemic showed us that we can cut back a lot of the driving to work at rush hour. And if we finish with people working 2 days a week, rather than working at home 2 days a week, that's a serious dent in the number of tailpipes that are going to be on the highway emitting greenhouse gases. So we can help solve the problem by telework. But we're still locked in the old mode of solve the problem by building new highways in Prince William County. The proposed Route 28 bypass, if they build it along alignment 2B, is going to tear down 50 occupied houses and probably close a mobile home park. Some of the rare affordable housing in a largely Hispanic neighborhood is going to be destroyed. And that's so commuters from Stafford and Culpeper will be able to drive on a freeway up to Centerville. Commuters could go over on Route 234 bypass to I-66 and take the toll lanes, but they'd have to pay toll. So if you want to know more about that particular project, check out the active Prince William website. They've got a lot of information posted about the Route 28 bypass. On the horizon is yet another bypass, the Bi-County Parkway. This is that old school thinking, just build another road. Let's not pay any attention to the alternatives. So this road is supposedly good. This road is being proposed for addition back into the comprehensive plan. It's part of an outer beltway dream, the high-speed highway to move trucks and cars from I-95 at Dumfries to I-270 in Maryland. Folks who live in Montclair might want to pay close attention to what looks like a road in western Prince William County, but it's going to add a whole lot of traffic on 234 at Montclair. So I've been talking about the supply side primarily, and that includes positive solutions, include replacing intersections with that have stoplights with interchanges. Those will smooth the flow of traffic. For example, rather than building the Route 28 bypass, we could look at the Balls Ford interchange and build interchanges for all of those intersections between Route 28 and Interstate 66. Cars can zip quickly to the hot lanes on Interstate 66 and be able to get to where they're trying to go without us having to spend $300 million on a freeway that will go through the affordable neighborhood to Centerville. We can create innovative intersections without left-hand turns, like what's being proposed on Route 28 north of Manassas. And VDOT's just chosen to build a flyover ramp for Route 123 and Old Bridge Road, eliminating the left turn there. And what's coming is Metro. At least that's the proposal. Blue line Metro to Quantico. That would be looking somewhat like this. Could be a yellow line extension. We could end up with Metro Rail down to Triangle with a yellow line extension. Or we could have bus rapid transit. And if you want to see a successful bus rapid transit, there's one in Richmond now on Broad Street. The new Pulse system is stimulating economic revitalization as well as providing basic transportation services. But the cost of Metro is out of sight. Those are B's on that chart because those are billions that we're talking about. $20 billion is the starting point. So for Prince William County to get Metro, you're going to have state and federal grants. And for Prince William County to get Metro, in order to get those grants, we're going to have to design our land use to make those transportation projects economically viable. We can't build Metro if we don't have adequate density at the transit stations. The state and federal governments won't provide us grants. That money will go to other places. We have other alternatives besides high-cost Metro. We have low-cost trails. We could build a connected network of bike paths and trails so that people can make the short trips to schools, parks, libraries, and of course, Starbucks, without having to get in a car. I represent the Prince William Conservation Alliance and the Greater Prince William Trails Coalition. That's a group of about 25 organizations that spent the last year. We built an aspirational trails map. Red lines on the map show the ideas of trails down Neabsco Creek, connecting to the Neabsco Boardwalk. County staff just agreed to expand its planned network of bike paths and pedestrian trails by 75 miles using the lines that we drew on that map. We think the county should be more ambitious, particularly for bike paths. Electric bikes, e-bikes are coming, and about a third of all the automobile trips in Prince William County are less than 5 miles. If we provided a safe path for people to get around, on many fair weather days, people will be willing to hop on an e-bike for a short trip. The COVID epidemic showed how many people are willing to bike, how many people want to get outdoors, and the tourism people are paying attention. They're jazzed as what is possible in Prince William besides just the Neabsco Boardwalk. Bike Route 1, shown on the right, East Coast Greenway, shown on the left, those are already routed through Prince William County, as is the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, National Park Service unit. So I'm going to encourage you to check out the county's website for suggesting where you want to see new bike paths, where you want to see new trails. I'm going to encourage you to talk to your planning commissioner and especially your elected supervisor that we need mobility beyond cars, that it is time for trails. They're far less expensive and far more healthy than building another highway through an already developed neighborhood. Now save the most important message for last. In journalism, this is called burying the lead. The best solution for reducing traffic congestion turns out also to be the solution for us to meet our 2030 climate change objective, to reduce property taxes on homeowners, and to increase economic development. That'd be a trifecta, except those are 4 things, so maybe it's a quadrifecta. We really need to be planning to accommodate about 100,000 new people coming to Prince William. That's the projected population growth. If we do business as usual land use planning and zone for new houses scattered across the landscape, then all those people are going to have to drive to get everywhere. And we're going to add more cars to our roads and have to do another bond issue to build more roads, the old dumb solution that we've followed for the past. We're going to increase vehicle miles traveled if we don't concentrate our development around our high capacity transit stations and our activity centers. And if we increase vehicle miles traveled, we're not going to meet our 2030 climate change target. On the other hand, we could complete a land use, housing, and mobility chapter that focuses new development that creates walkable live, work, play communities. It's been the vision in the strategic plan for years. It's time for us to follow through on that. So this is what downtown Manassas Park is getting converted into. It's a live, work, play community where people can get from where they live to where they work, where they shop, go to Starbucks without having to drive in a car. The new town center and innovation is supposed to be designed to be walkable. North Woodbridge is supposed to be designed to be walkable. Other areas with small area plans could be designed to be walkable. We've already seen that success in downtown Manassas as they've added housing near their VRE station. And that turns out to be another commitment that we made with COG, the Council of Governments. We need to put our affordable housing where we have affordable transportation. Otherwise, we're going to make everybody have to buy a car if they're going to get to work. So if we build our housing in concentrated areas around our high capacity transit stations, people can walk instead of get in a car. Tailpipes will be left unused, and we're going to find people getting around in a more social, connected community. And to the extent that we need to provide better transit, OmniRide is a much more cost-effective and easier solution for us to implement than any of the provisionary rail systems or even a proposed commuter ferry. And then we're not going to get metro if we don't have housing density. So we're going to have enough housing density first in order for us to qualify for metro. And there's no point in us not doing land use that will get us smart transportation. So I'm suggesting how we green up transportation. We offer alternatives to build another lane. We reduce vehicle miles traveled, so we reduce greenhouse gas emissions by creating walkable communities, creating a network of trails, by encouraging people to take advantage of transit. We can't meet our 2030 climate target if we just continue business as usual planning, if we just continue to scatter development all across the county. If we build a connected network of bikes, bike paths and trails, if we focus development on our activity centers, then we have a green solution compared to the alternative of just building more roads. So that's my spiel. That's my pitch. That's the suggested set of solutions that I offered to you. And I'm guessing that Ashley may have run into a question or two over time that might deserve an answer.
Thanks so much, Charlie. It was the connection between land use and the transportation network and addressing our climate crisis, and really beyond that, just creating a more like sense of community for Prince William County. I think it offers a lot for us to think about. And so Kim has been putting in various resources in the chat, and we will open it up for discussion. Now I don't see any questions, but some comments. So if you have a question or a comment, you can unmute yourself and come on in.
Hi, this is Terry Mewborn. I have a question.
Go ahead, Terry.
So one of the problems that I find with trying to use public transit in the United States, well, I should say outside of the major urban areas in the United States, is that the schedules seem to be based on usage. And I believe that there's in order to get people over to using public transit, there has to be continuous running public transit, which means that to get it started, it's like a chicken and egg problem, I think. If the buses, for example, in Prince William County were to run constantly so that you didn't have to stand at a bus stop for 2 hours waiting for a bus that might or might not come, people would be more likely to go there if they knew they could catch the bus within 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. But in order to make that happen, the investment has to be there for the transit to take a loss for a few years, does it not? In other words, get those routes running more regularly so that you don't have to schedule yourself around the transit. You could be assured that when you need to get somewhere, the transit's going to be there. But that won't happen unless taxpayers take a loss on the transit at first, right? Does that make sense?
You're absolutely right. And that is the economic challenge for the folks that are running OmniRide, is that they don't recover much of their costs from the fare box. They recover a lot of their operating costs from grants and federal funding. And we're going to have to finance running buses from place to place with empty buses for a while until we build the development. If you look at Richmond today, if you look at their bus rapid transit system, Broad Street was really not doing great after the 1960s. And in order to grow Broad Street's economic viability, first the university went in, and Virginia Commonwealth University, and built a lot of infrastructure that created street traffic and customers for stores, but they couldn't get beyond that one place. So the city and the state went ahead and built the pulse system that moves people back and forth along Broad Street. And the developers have shown up within a year and are filing one proposal after another to redevelop along Broad Street, so that the real estate taxes are going to end up increasing significantly and help repay the cost of that transportation system. Now, if you got a smart city council like they did in Richmond, you can see the connect between providing good transportation to stimulate real estate development and later getting real estate taxes that offset the cost of that transportation. If you don't have a forward-looking group of elected officials, they only look at the price tag for growing that bus service right now. And you know there's going to be a picture in the newspaper of an empty bus saying, why are we financing this?
So what do we do? How do we fix this problem?
Start small. Start with our small buses. You don't need a 600 passenger bus. And you can, I think you're right on target for the buzzword is headway, for that delay that you have to wait at the bus stop. Air 2 job centers in our area are Fort Belvoir and Quantico. That's where the greatest number of jobs are. Route 1 has the capacity to support buses going up and down Route 1 regularly at full speed. So the opportunity for us now is to put buses on the road in sync with where developers have said they want to grow their new facilities, where they want to grow their new development. North Woodbridge is very obviously one. But look at all the small area plans we've done in eastern Prince William County. If you go back to that picture I showed you of the metro stations, that's the route. That's where you start running buses. So the courts district and all these other places will be able to say, when you move in here, you can get back and forth. And in order for that to happen, you have to subsidize bus service. But it's a whole lot cheaper than $20 billion for metro, or $300 million for a road that people who don't live in Prince William are going to be the primary beneficiaries.
Oh, I wonder too, a follow-up question. To some extent, because I don't know how this works, would Prince William County be in competition with places within the Beltway that don't have adequate subway stops, for example, like Annandale comes to mind? And there's several other places where there is already high density housing and a need for metro stops, because you have to basically drive somewhere and park in order to catch the metro. So are we in competition with places like that that are inside the Beltway for funding?
We're not only in competition, but since we're not a member of WMATA, we have to pay a buy-in fee to become a part of WMATA in order to be part of the system. So our price tag for extending metro to Prince William is a lot higher than the price tag for extending metro to other places in Fairfax, District of Columbia, Georgetown, for example. So the feasibility of metro, it's a wonderful vision. It's a nice idea. We can take that idea, convert it to bus rapid transit, and make it happen a lot quicker. And if you get yourself a bus rapid transit pathway, someday later, you may have the same route that you want to run trains. I'm not holding my breath for metro, and the cost of metro is so high, you'd better have big city concentrated centers to justify metro, and we don't have that. So what we do have is a chance to do a lot of bus service, and we can do high quality bus service that will be every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes, and that will move people. So I'm a salesman for the bus system. It is, after all, the most flexible route possible. If it turns out that they build this place first before they build that place, we can change where the buses stop. Can't do that with trains.
Yeah, the buses offer a lot. Plus, we have the infrastructure with roads, so we can tap into that rather than building rails. And yeah, it just adds to what you can do with the infrastructure that we already have.
And be cautious of places that tell you that they are transit ready. For example, the Independent Hill rezoning, not even a bus stop there. PRTC isn't going to be able to provide service to the people that are going to move to Independent Hill. Every one of those people is going to have to get in a car to drive to everything they want to go to. And so if you stick a mobile home park out in Nokesville, there's no way you're going to run bus service to supply those people transportation services.
Yeah. Alan, you had a couple of comments. Do you want to come in and share your thoughts? Okay, well, you can pop in when you, oh,
I'm
there you are.
unmuted now anyway, but no, a couple of things that Charlie mentioned, the funding for Metro Rail, and I wanted to point out that the federal funding, at least in the past decade or two, has been pretty meager for that type of stuff. The New Starts program, for instance, at best would fund 50%. So the state or the localities would have to put up 50% of those billions, tens of billions of dollars. That's a lot of money. That's just not going to come. Plus, the Metro Rail extension is not going to come. No Metro Rail extension is going to happen, other than phase 2 of Dulles Rail, of course, until the core capacity issue across the Potomac is fixed. And that itself is probably tens of millions of billions of dollars, and a decade or 2 or 3 out. Yeah, I forget the other comment, but I was going to ask a question for Charlie. I was typing it at the time when you called on me, and that is if Charlie can explain what the timeline and process is for the citizens to comment on the land use and mobility chapters in the comp plan.
All right. Right now, the county is accepting public comment on all 3 chapters. The land use and housing chapters have not been presented to the Planning Commission in draft form yet, but comments are welcome now. The transportation chapter will be done at the end. The way they do transportation is first they decide where the houses are going to go, and then they decide how traffic will be modeled on for congestion on the roads between those houses. In my dreams, we'd be modeling transportation beyond just road traffic, but it seems it's hard to get the transportation people to consider that option. But the process is public involvement, submitting your ideas now. Pathway to 2040 is the website for the county's long-range comprehensive plan. And if you think the answer is for us to grow smart around activity centers rather than scatter housing, just say that. If you've got a more complicated suggestion to submit that. If you want to really organize it in public comment style, these chapters are built with a goal and an action strategies for each goal. So if you think the goal is to improve the ability to get around without increasing greenhouse gas emissions, that's a legitimate goal to suggest. And then you can suggest action strategies like I've done tonight that might allow us to accomplish that. The county's got a website where they're asking us to identify in particular, where do you want more trails? That website is currently still in development, but there's a link to it on their mobility chapter page in their long-range comprehensive plan. And I really think if you like safe routes to school rather than putting the kid in the bus, that we ought to be looking closely at how do we get our kids back and forth to schools without having to drive them. And so we can submit our ideas now on the county website, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to wait for the formal public hearing of the Planning Commission, but those will be coming any month now. And my guess is the transportation chapter will be done by June.
Valerie, do you want to pop in here and ask your question?
Charlie, great presentation. I saw that you said something about 75% of all new housing should be in activity centers and should be in affordable to low to middle income individuals. Where does Prince William County fit within that recommendation?
Well, the COG recommendation is focused on new housing development. So nobody's going to go and wipe the slate clean and then plant new houses. We've got an existing housing network. And so the focus is on those communities where the population is expanding. If we add 100,000 more people, our housing and land use and transportation chapters in the comp plan should plan for 75% of that new housing to be really within a quarter of a mile of a high capacity transit station. That's fundamental to activity centers. Our planners in the county use activity center phrase loosely. They put two houses together and call it an activity center some days. But an activity center by the COG definition is one of the 6 places in Prince William County that have a high capacity transit station, basically a VRE station. And so when we produce our housing chapter, when we produce our land use chapter, I can answer your question because we'll be able to look at the capacity expansion proposed in those chapters and say, oh, they scattered it all across the county, or, oh, they concentrated it in a few places. We'll know when they finish the planning.
Thanks, Charlie. Any other questions or comments? Feel free to unmute yourself and pop in.
Okay, well, I'll ask one more. This is Terry Mewborn again. I'm wondering, because I full disclosure, I've moved out of Prince William County for the moment, but I expect that someday I'll be back again. And I'm wondering, because I know so many people who seem very, very passionate about protecting the rural crescent, and they seem to be people who don't favor high density housing because they view that as being, you know, they associate that with urban and ugly. And I'm wondering how we can, you know, what's going on in the county to try to make the two not mutually incompatible with each other, the rural crescent and high density housing.
Well, and I would suggest that the rural crescent and high density housing don't go together, because the whole logic behind an urban boundary was for us to build cost-effective infrastructure, sewer, schools, roads, are in the development area, which is the appropriate place for us to locate our new housing. Or otherwise, if you put a lot of houses out in the rural area, you're going to have to put a lot of widened roads out in the rural area. You're going to have to put a lot of new infrastructure in the rural area, and you're going to have to raise property taxes to finance all of that. So the appropriate place for new development, I'm going with the COG strategy. Let's find the places where we have the ability to move people. Go back to that map for metro stations, and those are the places where folks want to be able to get back and forth. And if we hook on to the bus rapid transit system that Fairfax County is building down to Lorton, then we can connect in the regional network over time. But in the short run, from Woodbridge to Quantico, that's where we need to be moving people back and forth, or from Centerville to Manassas, from Gainesville to Manassas. Those are clear opportunities for us to plant a good bus system and put our housing where we can put our transportation. Innovation is a great place for us to be growing in order for us to accommodate the 100,000 people that are coming to the county. And so the folks that want to save the rural area for various and different reasons, I'm arguing that it's a tax effective strategy for us to grow in particular places. And if you don't want to pay high property taxes, we have to do the smart growth planning.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Thanks, Charlie. I think that's a good point, that the density, that the rural crescent is part of the smart growth plan, in that you protect a rural area that's low density, and you have an area where it can and should be built up with higher density, and those things are working together, and to have kind of like a regional sustainable and smart growth approach.
Yeah, the city of Manassas is doing this. They've looked at where they can grow, and they've identified the Mathis Shopping Center as the place where they want to grow essentially another downtown. And that will be connected to their VRE stations at Manassas Park and downtown Manassas with a shuttle bus system. People will be able to get around effectively, and they can accommodate a lot more development in the city of Manassas without having to build a lot more roads. Same logic applies for us at Woodbridge, North Woodbridge, Quartz, Potomac Mills, Manassas Mall. You know, these are all opportunities for us to have cost-effective development where we can provide quality transportation. And quality transportation is not one bus in the morning and one bus in the evening. And I dare you to miss that bus, you can't get to your job. You're going to have to run those buses, as Terry was saying, on a steady and regular basis.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for your question. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Eileen.
I was just going to say, get your crystal ball out. How do you see teleworking continuing, which I believe it will, and what impact do you think that'll have? One thing that I've found that's been very interesting, since I'm retired, during the day, there weren't very many cars on the road. Now, I guess everybody goes to lunch or does the traffic is terrible during the middle of the day. But I'm thinking that some companies will continue the I don't know about the government, but the teleworking. What do you think?
I used to live next to a factory. The factory stunk, and we would always talk about that's the smell of jobs. I'm thinking that's that afternoon and morning traffic that you're seeing. That's the economic development where if people are working from home and they need to get out for lunch, we can grow our businesses in Prince William County. We can grow our commercial tax base in Prince William County. We need to move the jobs to where people are or move the people to where jobs are. And that's what COG is recommending. Alexandria, Arlington need to add more housing density to match the number of jobs they have. Right now, those communities swell up like a balloon when commuters go in, and then they deflate in the afternoon when commuters leave. Prince William County needs to have jobs in Prince William County in order for us to get rid of this horrible commute pattern. And of course, jobs in Prince William County are really recommended for economic development and lower residential property taxes.
But don't you think the teleworking may continue, that people may continue to work from home?
I think that's going to be a major part of our solution, is that when they're working from home, they're not driving on the road. We don't need to build another road.
Except when
there's a Spanish company that put over $2 billion into widening I-66 to create the express lanes on I-66. They bet that we were going to have business as usual commuting. That's a huge investment that I would consider to be a high risk, because I think there's a whole lot of people that are going to be teleworking and going to the lunch shop or ordering in lunch and getting an afternoon hike in order to get refreshed before they go back to the computer. I think telework is going to be the thing that really makes Prince William County best place to live and work, as opposed to just a place to live where you can afford it.
Yes, I'm one of those fortunate few that lives and works here in Prince William, and I really enjoy my walk to work every morning. And I do walk to work every morning. I don't drive. Kim will attest to that. And I think that would be wonderful to have that more of an option. And of course, if you work from home, you can walk to work just by walking around your block.
Years ago, the Piedmont Environmental Council did a blueprint for a better region, and they came up with the obvious answer was either we move more jobs out to the suburbs or we move more housing into the inner core. That's the only way for us to deal with this transportation rush hour headache. And nobody could quite figure out how to move jobs to the suburbs. And now telework may be the answer to that.
Or at least partially so. Do we have any more? Thank you, Eileen. Any other questions or comments? There's a lot to review and mull over.
It's
Actually,
a complex problem.
Yeah. I wanted to ask Charlie a question, just following up on what Eileen was asking, is if there's any discussion or thought about liberalizing zoning or the comprehensive plan to allow more commercial uses, businesses, and residential zoned neighborhoods, if that could be an opportunity to provide more access for people and reduce the number of people who are driving to go to lunch, for example, or to get their haircut.
Yeah, the sad story is that when people have been talking about liberalizing zoning in Prince William County, they've basically been talking about putting more houses in the rural area with a lower acreage limit for developing the rural area, which doesn't achieve any of our objectives that we're talking about, unless you happen to be a land speculator in the rural area. So affordable dwelling unit ordinance that might be a solution to some communities. I'm not sure that you're going to see a lot of political support for doubling the density of Lake Ridge and Montclair by letting everybody convert their garage into another dwelling unit. Or I think it's in the new development that we have the possibility for change. In the liberalization of our business, it's an anything goes operation in Prince William County for business. If you're a business, you can get yourself rezoned pretty easily. So that's not really been an issue. And we got a lot of really vacant business land. Go visit Manassas Mall. So there are opportunities for us to take the paved parking lot at Potomac Mills and turn it into a viable viable community is ripe. There's a lot of places like that. Every one of those VDOT commuter lots, Horner Road and all the rest, are opportunities for us to do what we're doing at Stonebridge, put in a parking garage and put in a community. So there's places to grow that are right near the existing transportation network. We don't need to do housing scattered out in the Nowheresville, which requires everybody to then get another car.
Thanks, Doug. Alan and Sandra, you had some comments in the chat. Did you want to share them with the group? Or does anyone
Well,
else have?
I had some comments, but they largely echo what Charlie's been saying, is that the county should be focusing on redeveloping the existing corridors that we have, disturbed corridors like Sudley Road in north of Manassas and Centerville Road in Yorkshire, and of course Route 1, which can be redeveloped to much higher density, and Potomac Mills for that matter. I was just at Manassas Mall at the vaccination clinic today. And I've lived in this area for 8 years. It's the first time I've ever been in that mall. But yeah, there's such, there's such potential. There's certainly a lot of residential density along some of those corridors, particularly Sudley Road, not within a block or two, but if you go off it a few blocks, there's plenty of residential density there. That if the blocks within the block or two of Sudley Road were redeveloped with 4 or 5 story buildings, mixed use buildings, that really could serve a lot of transit oriented development and have regular bus service for those people who have moved there. Same with Centerville Road, which actually could start all the way in downtown Manassas, go through Manassas Park, and have a corridor up to the Fairfax County line of just the thriving redevelopment community, again at the gateway to Prince William County.
And the world-class example of this is the Boston to Roslyn corridor in Arlington, where they had gas stations, pawn shops, and one-story buildings all along Fairfax and Wilson Boulevard. They put in the orange line, so they financed the subsidy of the transportation. And look what's happened in the Roslyn-Boston corridor. But if you go 3 blocks back from all that development, you see some really nice 3-story residential development and 2-story residential development. It's just the corridor for about 6 blocks, 3 on either side, that's highly developed. And it's a really nice transition that they've done. It's not like we have to invent this wheel. We've already figured out what needs to be done.
Thanks, Charlie, and thanks, Alan, for your comments. Any other final thoughts? Well, I think that that is a good note to end on. We've identified some areas to focus on, and thank you everyone for your thoughtful comments and really great questions. And Charlie, as always, thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. I think we've all learned a lot, and we'll be following up with the plethora of resources that you've provided us here tonight. And yeah, I encourage you all to take some of this information. If you have comments, to share them with the Board of Supervisors as they're revisiting these chapters of the comprehensive plan. Thank you, everyone.